Hello and welcome to Moral Side of the News, our weekly discussion of today's top stories from a moral, ethical, and religious perspective. I'm Sean Kalin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and I'm joined today, as always, by a distinguished panel of local religious leaders. Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church, Sister Janet M. Peterworth, OSU Interfaith Paths to Peace Board Member, Rabbi Matt Derrenbacher, The Temple, Reverend Jason Crosby, Center College, and Richard Uhler, retired U.S. Army chaplain. This week, we commemorate the 81st anniversary of the atomic bomb being dropped on Japan. Today, August 6th, as we record this, is the anniversary of Hiroshima. And Sunday, August 9th, as this show airs, the anniversary of the dropping of the bomb on Nagasaki. Here's a look back at how ABC covered the 80th anniversary last year.
As tensions spike from the battlefields of Ukraine to the Middle East, the horrors of Hiroshima exactly 80 years ago today stand as a warning of the unimaginable dangers of nuclear war.
There it is, every morning at 8:15. That sound rings out over Hiroshima at the exact time the bomb was dropped.
Detonated at 2,000 feet above the city, a single atomic bomb causing an explosion that ripped through the town.
Город Хиросима.
Destroying everything within a half-mile radius, an intense fire swallowing up the city, burning all day long and claiming at least 100,000 lives, some estimates even higher.
When I recall those days, I get the head, but I want to cry, you see.
In Hiroshima 2 years ago, I met Keiko Agura. She was just 8 years old when the bomb was dropped, but the memories of that day remain hauntingly vivid.
Of course, I remember the flash. First, there was bright flash and wind, like a typhoon or tornado, you know. When I opened my eyes, I was surprised because everywhere was just dark, and then no sound, I remember.
Now 88 years old, Agura makes it her mission to share her story so others won't forget the horrors of nuclear war.
I first sensed burnt hairs, very bad smell. Their skin was hanging down from the tip of their finger and coming like a ghost or a zombie or something, burned hair, coming to my area, and they started to die.
Ogura tells me how she met a 6-year-old Ukrainian girl at the Peace Museum. She could see how that little girl's innocence had also been lost by the brutality of war.
She was so much interested in dead body. Is he dead or is she dead? Is it a man? And she said, oh, like Ukraine.
Like Ukraine.
She will continue this bad memory forever, like I have still now.
Near the center of the blast stands the iconic atomic dome, the ruins of a former exhibition hall, the only structure that survived the explosion.
This is a shrine outside the atomic dome. You can see there are flowers, there are photos.
Reminders around Hiroshima to keep memories of the consequences of that day alive.
I know the fear, the reality when the nuclear weapon was used. Then I can't stand even existing nuclear weapon, even single weapon existing on the world, on this planet. We need to think about the future generation.
So, Sister, we'll begin with you. You brought this topic to us a few weeks ago, and we said, hey, let's come on the show and talk about it. And you accepted our invitation. And and you're a board member for Interfaith Paths to Peace, which is
indeed.
A very important topic for them and for you. So your thoughts as we commemorate that.
Well, I guess I must confess to begin with that I was 9 years old when that bomb was dropped. And I remembered from an American kid who was very happy because we had sense enough to know that the war was going to be over. And I look back on that now and feel, I guess, a certain guilt. I had an awakening later on in my adult life because all those many years, I never thought about the atomic bomb, except how happy we were running out in the street, banging on pots and pans because the war was going to be over. And so I guess that's what makes me interested in what Interfaith Path to Peace is going to be doing. Yesterday, we had a beautiful ceremony with the floating candles, the lighting of those candles, and those candles stand for so much. And so Interfaith Path to Peace does not want that event to be a one and done kind of thing. We want to bring this notion of the morality of nuclear weapons to faith houses so that they can get folks to talk about what that means. There was a great movement in the 80s. People were taking to the streets and everything, but it's kind of faded away now. So we want to bring it back to people so that they can talk about the intrinsic danger, especially with the coming of AI. That complicates it even more. So that's what IPP is hoping to do. And so that's, I think, what brings this to religious people as a moral issue. And I would like to hear what other people think about that as an ethical, moral issue in our day.
Absolutely. Richard, we'll start with the Army guy.
Well, I had a lot of things I could that I jotted down here. You know, World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars, and we've had 233 documented conflicts around the world since 1918. Yeah. And whether it's domestic, foreign wars, foreign or domestic conflicts, neighboring nations, uprisings, revolutions. And then I said, well, okay, has there ever been years where there hasn't been one? And I go, oh, okay. I looked through from 1900 and didn't find a single year there wasn't a conflict around the world somewhere. Justification for using the atomic bomb, and it's a few years before my time, not a whole lot, but and my parents really didn't talk about it at all as we were growing up. It was just something that happened and it was done, you know. So, but to put an end to the war, to save more casualties was the justification. And several high-ranking officers advised against its use. For example, Admiral Leahy, who at that time was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he says there was no material assistance to ending the war as a result. Even General Eisenhower, at the time, Supreme Allied Commander, he says he opposed the bomb because Japan had was already ready to surrender, and because he did not want the U.S. to be the first to use it. Admiral Halsey, commander of the Third Fleet, he called the first atomic bomb an unnecessary experiment and noted that Japan had already sent peace feelers. So there was really no reason for this, but yet it sounds like Truman really didn't get hardly any flack at all over it. And then when you talk about casualties, well, I start, okay, what about that now? Estimated casualties saved by using the atomic bomb, historians say combatant Japanese saved by forcing surrender about 110 to 210,000. Per Truman, estimated U.S. combat casualties saved was about 200 to 250. Churchill claimed the Allied lives saved was probably about 1.2 million. At the expense of what? 90 to 166,000 at Hiroshima and 60 to 80,000 at Nagasaki. Having been part of one war, I don't really see any moral justification for a war at all. Now, maybe the American Revolution, but there could have been probably other solutions there too. So, but I thought it was interesting, and I heard when he had passed on, but there's a man by the name of Tsutomu Yamaguchi. He was the only officially recognized double survivor of the bombings. He worked in Nagasaki. He made a business trip to Hiroshima, and lasting till August 6th when that bomb went off. He returned to Nagasaki on the 9th. He was talking about his injuries to one of his coworkers, and the second bomb dropped. Mm-hmm. So, but he spent later years speaking publicly against nuclear weapons, and he said the reason that I hate the atomic bomb is because of what it does to the dignity of human beings. He passed on in 2010, age 93, of cancer.
Richard, I appreciate your setting the table for us by providing some context for the moral complexities that were present in that era. There were many. But as I enter into the conversation, I'm approaching it from the vantage point of one who came of consciousness and awareness in what arguably was the period in history, at least in this country, when the threat of nuclear devastation was at its lowest point. Post-Cold War, through the 90s, early 2000s. And what I have seen and has been somewhat jarring for someone my age, middle-aged, is the way in which, in the last decade in particular, there has been regression from what was, in my estimation, relatively speaking, at the very least, a more peaceful time. Why was it more peaceful? Well, there was great intentionality, I believe, among our leaders to address this issue and to be proactive in establishing international treaties, conversations, dialogue between major nuclear powers to take measures and steps to lessen the threat of some catastrophe. Earlier this year, the New START treaty, which limited the production of nuclear ballistic missiles between Russia and the United States, it expired. And so now we find ourselves, for the first time in my lifetime, faced with conversations about the extent of proliferation and what might be in front of us as we move into the future. When I sit back and I think about this in this moment from a ethical and moral perspective, what I see undergirding these conversations from that vantage point is the real question for us about how will we relate to one another. And a real question before us at this point in time is, will we take the road of might makes right and continue to produce weapons of all sorts and varieties, which are growing increasingly dangerous with each passing day? Or will we heed the wisdom of the traditions that each of us call home, but yet stand in unison when our traditions continue to say that we should treat one another as we would be treated? I can't imagine a world or situation where treating somebody else as I want to be treated entails me building an armory in order to threaten my neighbor, let alone use those weapons. So I think that's the moral question that's before us at this point in time, and why it's so imperative that we urge our leaders and those who can get to tables to have conversations, to deal with the important minutia and the mundane aspects that are involved in having these types of important conversations, because what's happening there is in modern era a manifestation of an attempt to try to treat one another as we would treat ourselves. To do that, we have to talk and we have to negotiate. There have to be agreements. There has to be a relationship, and we are in danger because we're not in that position at the moment.
I'm really glad you brought up you highlighted the relational aspect to all of this, right? Because in order for people to make good decisions and to live morally, we have to be in relationship, in honest relationship with one another and with ourselves. I think one of the major challenges of just kind of our society in general today is that people are so willing to lie to themselves in order to feel like they're right about something. And once you kind of go down that rabbit hole, it's really hard to take a moment and say, oh, maybe I was wrong about this, or maybe we in our history were wrong for doing this. And the other relational piece is that major moments like this lead to just very intense intergenerational trauma, right? There's the people that survived. There are family members of people who didn't survive. There's the next generation and the generation after that. And one of the things that unfortunately can happen is hurt people hurt people. And so I think if we can really take an honest look at our past and say, yeah, you know, this was not right. This is not something that we should have done. I think we can ideally invite more peace and deeper relationship with one another so that we can actually get to that point where we treat others the way we would want to be treated. I mean, it's sort of the cornerstone of all of our traditions. Behavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. That's it, right? So I don't think loving my neighbor involves obliterating them, but it's just my opinion.
In the Catholic liturgical calendar, August 6th, this day that we're talking about, is the Feast of the Transfiguration. For those who may not be familiar with the New Testament, the Transfiguration is the story when Jesus appears before some of the apostles and his countenance changes. And he becomes dazzling white. And his clothes even become white, dazzling in the sense of notice. And Catholic preachers and Catholic writers, some that I've seen, have spoken about the juxtaposition, given this particular day, between that light of God and the light that comes from a nuclear weapon. And then you have this ultimate question, I think, if you distilled it out, for any believer, and that is, where do we put our ultimate trust? What? Is it going to be in the sense of goodness and of peace and the wisdom that comes from God? Or is it going to be something like, as Jason described, an armory that we have built up? It seems that of course our ultimate trust is in God. And so, like others have said, I think believers, all believers, are called to be peacemakers. And therefore, and then believers then, that we're ones who advocate to our leaders to say, we need treaties in order to reduce the number of nuclear armaments that we have. We also need treaties and agreements that keep others from possessing a nuclear weapon. We don't need to build up that more and create more tension in that way. And then also to seek a way of peacemaking in our world, that we need that as well. And believers, I think, are called to become aware and to do some advocacy in that way.
I think all of you have given food to the discussion that IPP hopes to get going after we celebrate this event. That we can bring people of faith together to talk exactly about the things you're talking about. How can we get people in dialogue so that they do respect one another? And power is not the issue any longer. It's Interfaith Path to Peace. Really, the basis of that group is the Golden Rule, no matter how you say it in all the different faith traditions. So I appreciate all the things that you're bringing, because I hope you can take those back to your congregations in some way and really have some time talking about them. I think that the religious leaders who spoke at the United Nations said that all faith traditions take the value of human life as a basic value. That's really important. And they further stated that they believe that the use of nuclear weapons is inherently immoral, even in their existence. There are 9 countries that have an arsenal of nuclear weapons now. The 5 great powers that I'm sure you know, and then there's India, Pakistan, and Israel, and North Korea. They don't have as many as the 5 powers, but they have them. And having these weapons has not deterred all these little proxy wars that you've referred to that have gone on all these years. And so bringing this back to the faith community so that people in the pews, or however you call your places where people sit in your faith tradition, pews? Say pews? Okay, pews. Good. Okay, people in the pews have an opportunity to talk about this.
Well, Sister Janet, I really appreciate you taking the initiative to bring this before us today. We talk about such a wide range of subjects on the moral side of the news, and none is without some sort of connection or tethered to a moral examination or critique. But when one thing that I noticed in preparing for today's show is that, one, this issue now is terribly pressing for the reality in which we find ourselves in 2026, as we're commemorating the 81st anniversary of the dropping of these bombs. It's pressing. But then, two, one thing that I've appreciated about this conversation is it demonstrates the importance and significance of the wisdom embedded in our faith traditions. We've talked about the golden rule. We've talked about transfiguration, relationality. One other piece that I would add that this particular topic brings to my mind that is very biblical and theological is fear. There is perhaps no greater driver of bad behavior outside of maybe thirst and hunger than fear. And so I believe there's a reason that the most quoted phrase throughout the entire Bible are reminders to be not afraid. And I think at the core of this issue is when we have a threat or some opposition that might be instilling fear in us. Our traditions continually teach us, do not be afraid, lean on the wisdom, goodness, grace, love of God, and that will be the path to take that will lead to peace for everybody.
See, I think fear is the thing that gets equated with deterrence in this situation. If you've got it and you've got it, and we're both afraid of each other, however, now we're living with AI. And we already are seeing every day on the news rogue things within the AI family, and so what happens that this kind of weaponry creates such total destruction? It's indiscriminate in terms of people. It's not a situation of combatants. It's anybody. And so that whole piece that's the scary piece today.
Well, even in the 50s, though, we went outside, we went to fire drill. We stayed inside underneath the desk, we were CD drills.
True.
And even the doomsday clock says even in 1953 it was down to 2 minutes. So, start of the Cold War in that area. And then all through the 50s with not only the atomic bomb in the 40s, then the hydrogen bomb in the mid-50s that came about. So, we were concerned back
now
then.
what minute is left?
85 seconds.
85 seconds, yes. Scary.
We have about 3 minutes left. Let's touch on living under the threat. Jason, you brought it up. I'm in the same generation that you are. We grew up without a fear. I mean, when the Berlin Wall fell in 1980, that was a great sign of peace for everyone. And we didn't have a threat. We didn't have a constant threat like the Cuban Missile Crisis and Korea and Vietnam even. So how do we talk to our younger folks about where we are today and the importance of this? We have about 2 minutes left.
I think memory and telling the stories. And that's one of the things I love about the clip that we showed at the beginning, is that woman is telling her story. And it's important that a lot of people hear that. I also think, too, it's important to make it relevant so that younger generations can relate to it. I mean, I'm a child of the 90s, and so I was in 4th grade when 9/11 happened, and now we're far away from that. The generations after me didn't experience that. They just live in a post-9/11 world, and so we have these moments that kind of define our generation, and unfortunately those moments are moments of tragedy. And if we can tell the stories and try our best to learn from the mistakes of the past, so then we can hopefully build a better future.
I'll give Sister Janet the last word if you want. We have about 30 seconds left.
Well, once again, I urge you, try to get your congregations to be thinking about this and to do the dialogue around it, so that we have a realization of what kind of damage this kind of weaponry can do. It's not a myth. It could happen, and that's the scary part.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for bringing it. Echo Jason's words. Thank you for bringing this topic to us. It's rare that we have a single topic for the show. It happens occasionally because there's a lot that gets talked about, but this was an important one, and our thoughts and prayers are still with all the survivors and those who lost their lives on 81 years ago on today, Nagasaki, the anniversary of Nagasaki. So thank you, Sister. Thanks to our panel today, Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church, Sister Janet M. Peterworth, OSU, Interfaith Pass the Peace Board member, Rabbi Matt Derrenbacher, the Temple, Reverend Jason Crosby, Center College, and Richard Uhler, retired U.S. Army chaplain. Thanks for watching and listening to The Moral Side of the News this week. Join us again next week for our all-new show.